Greetings, I am Tom Earl. On this week's episode, we talk staying on the path with warrior poets Jamie Dawson and Sam Obeid. Check it out. Woo! Greetings, I am Tom Earl, and this is my year of depth. We know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you are here today sharing your greatest gifts, your time and energy, means the world to me. I hope you know that in this moment, you are valued, you are loved, and you are appreciated just as you are. As you can see, I am not alone. I have two amazing guests. They go by the names of Sam and Jamie Dawson. What's going on, team? How y'all doing?
Hello, doing great.
I am feeling so blessed and honored to have you all here. So just want to start from a place of gratitude. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Of course. And for those following along at home, Sam and Jamie are return guests. Sam, I think you've been on the show twice, if I remember correctly. Yeah, twice. And Jamie was one of our guests back in 2016 when I switched to doing an online poetry workshop back in 2016. Jamie, I think, was our second or third ever feature. So I'm so grateful to have y'all back. And so much has happened since both our interviews with all of y'all, especially Jamie. Oh, Lord. So I'm curious to hear what's the update. Here's how we like to start is, why don't we do this? Why don't y'all go ahead, tell us a little bit about yourselves, what's going on in your life, any type of intro you'd like to do, and then we'll jump into some questions. So why don't we go over to you, Sam? Who's Sam? What's the bio? Give us the resume. Share us into your brilliance.
First of all, thank you so much for having me on this show. It's a pleasure to share space with Jamie. Jamie, I don't know if you know this, but I know your work very well. I know you from Heard Him Say. I don't think we've been in spaces together, but I don't think we've ever actually met. So very, very happy to be sharing this space specifically with you because you are a boss poet. And if nobody else knows this, then they're going to know this now. Like Tom said, my name is Sam. I am the program director of an organization called Community Tampa Bay. Community Tampa Bay runs an amazing youth leadership, inclusion, and diversity program called Anytown. And it's an anti-discrimination program. It's absolutely fantastic. We have amazing young humans come out of it. So I'm the program director of that wonderful organization. I am also a spoken word poet and an activist in the Tampa Bay area. I identify as, I'm Indian, born and raised. I identify as a lesbian. I'm an immigrant. I was raised Hindu on my mom's side, Muslim on my father's side. So a lot of my work also speaks to the intersectionalities of my identity. And for the most part, I think for starters, that's who I am. So yeah, that's what I got. Jamie?
Thank you, Sam. I agree. I was thinking about that today. We haven't really shared too much space, but I followed your keynotes and the work that you've been doing in the community. And I'm excited for this conversation that we are about to have. Thank you. So I am Jamie Dawson. I'm a spoken word artist, actor, theater performer, activist, and I love scholarship as well. So I finished at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I did psychology, African-American studies, and was also part of a cohort in the First Wave program, which focuses on arts, activism, and academics with cohorts of scholars.
I love that. Two amazing people. You set that up well. Here's our first question coming at y'all live, and we'll go to you first, Jamie. Is the prompt, I'm sure y'all might have heard this before, if you really knew me. So if you really knew me, you'd know that what?
If you really knew me, you would know that kindness and love are the foundations. No matter what the conversation is, personal, broad, scholarly, mindful, it's all to be better, to share love, to expand.
I love that. And what about you, Sam?
If you really knew me, you would know that my love language is accountability. both ways, both receiving and giving. Huge fan of accountability. Don't really enjoy conversations where no one's asking any questions and there's a lot of ego and assumptions leading the conversation with everybody talking over each other. I enjoy conversations greatly where people are willing to put themselves out there and be wrong and learn from their wrongness. And use the idea that I could totally be wrong about this as a strength and like start the conversation from there and mean it, right? So accountability is my love language.
Man, I resonate with that. When I wanted to relearn what love meant to me, it was an intentional period of my life. So I got really into bell hooks, Iyanla Van Zandt, Brene Brown. One of the things that I did was I listed off my top 5 ingredients of a loving relationship, and accountability was the first thing. So I suppose that makes sense why we're still friends after all these years, because we share that love language. So I really appreciate that, Sam. So y'all, what's this past year? The March to March. What's going on? Tell me your thoughts, your feelings, anything you just kind of want to share. Let's just leave it there. Open-ended as open-ended can get. The past 12 months. Go.
Okay, I can start on that one. So last March I was living in Brooklyn, New York. I moved back to Tampa around June. Had different projects that I was going to start, theater, around the city, but then having everything crumble, fall through with pandemic, the social distancing. In New York, I was quarantining heavy. So it got, I think, up to like 90 days of not leaving the apartment. So that was wild. I didn't really feel like I had too much going on. In April, I did a writing workshop. Really writing is what really like held me through. That's when I first entered the virtual world, doing workshops and open mics through the computer. And from there to there, here now, I think that community has expanded so much. So I've relied on those platforms. It's been difficult for me to really wrap my head around accepting all of the blessings that I've also gotten during this period of time. Like I've started 2 new jobs, got 2 new promotions, like moved forward with my art in ways that like I never have before. And so gratitude, a lot of personal reflection and growth. So I'm here right now, but I'm also in an uncomfortable spot because I've been growing, which is like a good problem to have.
I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that with us, Jamie. What about you, Sam?
March is like a really important year for me, important month for me because it's my birthday month, right? And for the last 3 years, or I think this year included, March has been like something catastrophic always happens in March. Okay. It's like, it's so harsh. Like I had in 2018, March 27th was when I found out that I could no longer be employed by Community Tampa Bay because of my immigration status, and that technically I was out of status, right? 27th, I found out. 30th is my birthday. Yeah. And then March 2019, I had this like huge showdown with somebody in power who was trying to take credit for my immigration and literally said to me, "You're in that seat because I put you there," right? Despite the fact that yours truly went back to India, advocated for herself, got the visa, and came back to the US, right? 2019, that happened. 2020, what happened? 6 days before we decided to work from home because of the pandemic. Yeah. And then 2021, I had like planned this really nice trip for my puppy and me to go to Georgia and like be in the cabins and stuff like that. And then like kind of got doxxed by one of the conservative right-wing newspapers, publications. The day before, 2 days before I was supposed to leave, and I was not feeling like I could be in a restful place, and I did not want to be up in the woods alone. You know, it felt off. So I canceled the trip and I was like, okay, I'll stay in Tampa. I'll be at home. It'll be fine. My birthday was on Tuesday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I was sick as a dog, right? Not COVID related, just stomach related. But I was unwell. I had like this heavy migraine. I could barely lift my head up off the bed, et cetera, et cetera. And at this point, I've learned to take it in my stride. I was like, okay, universe, you're just trying to let me know every birthday that, hey, don't forget, your life is about strife. I respect you, universe. You are the woman I've been in the longest relationship with in all my life, and I greatly respect you. Thank you for that lesson. I say that and I move on with it. So from March to March, if you look at it like that, I think like it's been difficult, but I also have a lot of privilege in that I live by myself. So I don't have to think about infecting anybody else should something happen to me, right? I can quarantine for as many days as I need to. If something happens, I'm healthy in so many ways, right? Like emotionally, I've had the opportunity to invest in my health. Physically, I've had the opportunity to invest in my health. So if something did happen and I do fall ill, it's a question of getting better. That's all that it is, right? Like I don't have any life-threatening conditions that will put me in harm's way instantly, like it would for so many folks who have suffered and who we've lost over the course of this last year. Work still continued despite the fact that I work for a nonprofit organization. Nobody lost their jobs. We still managed to keep our jobs. We transitioned to online really quickly because of the incredible team that I've had the good fortune to work with. My puppy is healthy and happy. I am not much of a people person outside of my work life, so I was very happy to be in isolation. I did not experience I wasn't really missing anybody, right? Like all of that. And so like a lot of good things have happened, even though I recently started dating someone. How does that happen in quarantine? And she's absolutely just this amazing, amazing human that I didn't even think could possibly exist. And so a lot of really good things have happened over the course of this time. And yet we are where we are. And it's a really, really difficult time. Tampa, we had so many protests happen after the murder of George Floyd. So many of our people were hurt in so many ways, shapes, and forms. Tampa Police Department is absolutely inadequate in every way, shape, or form, right? And I use that word very kindly. I would like to use other words to describe them, but I understand that we are on somebody else's show, and so I want to be respectful of Tom and your platform as well. But Tampa Police Department is absolutely useless and inadequate. They've hurt so many of my friends in so many ways, shapes, and forms. They've hurt me in so many ways, shapes, and forms. So a lot of like difficulty, and yet like a lot of that community building happening from so much pain at the same time. So I don't know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and isn't that just how life is supposed to be?
One time I was in Tampa and I got pulled over by Tampa police, and I'm in the driver's seat and a black male's in the passenger seat. And so, they come up as they do like both windows. And so this was almost 10 years ago. So I'm trying to put it all together. So they start talking to us, right? And they take our information, they go back and they come back up and are like, well, we thought at first it was suspicious, but now seeing you all, you don't look like suspicious people. So we'll let you go. And I just couldn't let it rest. So I was like, how would you know what someone who's suspicious looks like? And my friend next to me, he's like, let it fucking go. I'm like, is it when you saw it was me? Because we were driving in a black neighborhood. I was like, when you saw it was me? And he's like, are you getting an attitude with me? And I was like, well, I just work for this program called Anytown, and we're really into dialogue and stuff. And then the person at the window was like, oh, I've heard of Anytown. I've always wanted to volunteer there. They're like, I used to be a school resource officer. I'm like, why don't you give me a card? We'd love to have you volunteer this summer. And my friend's like, what is this what it's like when white people get pulled over by police officers? You could just give them attitude and then recruit them to be volunteers. So yeah, that was a really interesting and polarizing experience for sure.
Yeah.
What this past year, I feel like there's so much grief that has just gone unprocessed. Just not even even beyond the deaths from COVID. What do you think is artists? What are the gifts or tools that you all kind of come back on when processing and when trying to, individually process, but as a collective process and move things? What have you all been falling back on or finding your relationship between art and that grief that is just happening? How have you found that relationship?
I'm going to try to talk out loud and gather the thoughts. What I find is that it all comes back to the ability to feel and then voice those feelings. So with poetry, part of like the definition of poetry is taking something abstract, taking an expression and trying to put it into words when it would otherwise be incomprehensible. So the ability to feel, I think, has been the root of processing the grief, the collective trauma, and releasing the things that have been needed to be released for a long time now, just in the collective. For example, I sit inside of workshops and the prompt could be something as easy as burnout, write about burnout. And even though we can all talk about what it feels like to be exhausted and to be tired, really what came out in almost every single person's response is this disconnect, what it feels like to be disjointed, the heart separate from the head, your actions separate from who you want to be. And so we start with like a general theme, something like grief and the collective, and then we move into really the root of it, what causes it, and give it voice. So that's been the falling back process for me.
I love that. Thank you for that, Jamie.
So much depth, Jamie, and that's so beautiful. Honestly, I mean, maybe unpopular opinion among poets, I don't know. I steer away from art when purposefully. I steer away from art when trauma is manifesting in the moment, right? When I don't know how to deal with it, then I don't want to write about it. I just want to live in it, right? And a lot of I'm having a lot of PTSD from what happened to me 2 years ago with immigration, right? That I don't know how to handle because it's never happened to me before. Same way now with the pandemic, I don't know how to handle it because it's never happened to any of us before, right? Individually or in the collective, it's never, I don't know what this trauma looks like, so I can't handle it. Otherwise I always I compartmentalize and then I make space for myself to process that trauma, because in my life, for me, everything has to happen on my terms. I do not like when my feelings come to me unannounced. I get very annoyed with that, right? Oh, wow. So I compartmentalize and then I'm like, okay, this is the time that I'm setting aside to process. You can feel now, right? And I do things, like I have exercises and stuff like that will allow me to process that grief or pain or hurt or anger or whatever that emotion might be that chooses to exercise itself in my body. And so not being able to do that, I think, has been the most difficult part for me, because it just comes whenever it wants to come, man. I'll be a safety marshal in the middle of something and someone will say something and all of a sudden I'm crying my eyes out, like, what is this? There's no time for this right now, is what I try to tell myself. But my feelings are failing to listen in this last year. And so I'm trying to recondition understanding, not dismissing my feelings, but understanding what they need and compartmentalize accordingly so that I can gain a little bit more control over them. That's what I'm working through right now.
Jamie, there seemed to be something Sam said that seemed to resonate with you. Did I read that right?
Yeah, that is so interesting, right? Because for me, like, my feelings they do come unannounced. However, they just put me under arrest until I've felt whatever it is I need to feel, or at least gathered a message from at least what they're trying to say to me. The compartmentalization. Oh man, I don't know if I'm envious of that, but I remember I was driving home and I've been working on myself. I've been working on myself in the most tangible and literal way I ever have since 2021 started. And what that looks like for me is notebooks, journals, courses about discovering the natural self, working with the Inner Peace Network, mindfulness. And so sometimes, like in that process, like doors are opened and the feelings won't come in like immediately once I've opened that door, but then they just sneak in like from the hallway whenever they want. So I remember I was driving home one day and it like hit me. I was like, wow, like energy. And I was specifically thinking about transformation, and energy can't be created or destroyed, which is a law of thermodynamics. But then I started applying that to other aspects of life, and I'm like, wow, like you can't just create a non-racist. Like you have to transform like that energy, that negativity or hate or intolerance into something else. So you take that energy that's already there and you have to move it. And so I'm like, oh my goodness. And like it was an emotional experience, like realizing this. So I get feelings, they come, they send messages, and I just do my best to listen, like without being like dysfunctional.
I appreciate both of what you both shared. It sounds like introspection is a key ingredient of growth. Am I hearing that right?
I would say so. Being able to look in, because to me it's about trying to be a better self, and then when you're better to yourself, you can be better to other people. Maybe you can operate better, and it starts here.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think you can, in any of the work that we do, I don't know how we would, maybe you can, I don't know, but I don't know how we would do that work, honestly, without knowing what that work does to us to begin with, right? Like to be able to ask other people to do the things that we are asking them to do, we have to be able to do that work on ourselves to begin with, So, I mean, one of the biggest themes of Anytown is no self. And so no self, like KNOW, no self, right? And so I think knowing who you are and how you operate in this world is going to help you understand how other people operate in this world. And I think that creates so much space for empathy, both for yourself and for others as well.
What about that did you like, Jamie?
Empathy, like when you know yourself, you know others. I think that's what my tea bag told me this morning too.
I wrote
Really?
it. I wrote it for your tea bag because I knew we were going to meet this evening.
I love that. Sam, is there anything coming up into the spaces that you wanted to ask about or point out or give a little exclamation to?
This growth piece, that first question you asked me, I'm still ruminating on that, right? The first question you asked about how has this year been? I mean, everyone's asked that question, and yet like every time I feel there's so much more of an answer to constantly give, And this year, like I've just been going back and forth on, just as a human of color who's been in all these spaces so often, but this last year, with the level to which being a human of color has been decisive in so many ways, not from me, but of me, right? And the level to which we have seen, explored, questioned, reflected on white allyship, so much of that has come up for me in this last year, where I have learned so much about the white folks around me. And it has been such a difficult and hurtful journey on so many levels. Just so much pain in that realization of who will promise to be there for you, and then like promise, right, with gusto, like, of course I will have your back, of course I will protect you, of course I will stand on the front lines with you. You ask the question, who's with me, right? And so many of my white friends are the first ones to respond without any doubt whatsoever, despite the fact that historically they are the last people to stand with you. And yet historically they are also the first people to claim that they will be there with you. And then learning through so many different difficult lessons that I think I've also learned before, but I just haven't recognized it. But recognizing it from a different lens this time around, that man, words actually mean nothing without action, and there's so little action, right? And figuring out, and again, like for some reason, not wanting to lose these friends, I still don't know why. I still don't know why I don't want to lose these friends, because they're literally refusing to prioritize my safety, and I still don't want to lose these friends. But I think the hurtful part is first knowing that I don't want to lose these friends, and then after that, lowering my expectations for that friendship has been even more painful in ways that, I don't know, I'm usually a big fan of dialogue. Like, I want to talk to you about it, I want to process together, and then come to a decision of where we stand now. I haven't done that. I've just decided what my expectations are going to be, because I'm so concerned for my safety all the time. I don't know. That's just another piece that came to me when talking about what this year has been like.
Well, I appreciate you sharing. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jamie.
I was just going to say, yeah, that's tough. And thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Agreed. I think it's a gift to give voice to that, because I'm assuming, I could be wrong, a lot of people that are listening right now, you're giving voice to a feeling and an experience that I think a lot of people listening right now are going through. I know for me, hearing that, it's been a year too of, as somebody who's an aspiring white ally, of where have I gotten comfortable? Where have I become the white exceptionalism? Like, oh, that's not me. Even though how could it not be when I'm a part of the benefit and the system? What do you think are the reasons that allow someone to engage in that dialogue that is uncomfortable and maybe even has you completely change your entire worldview? Somebody who is able to move through that, and then somebody who, like we're saying, it just remains words only, right? So surface level change. What do you think is within the person or the experience that allows for someone to fully step into a dialogue that actually transforms the inside, rather than just kind of like a rah, like, yeah, you know what I mean?
Jamie, I feel like maybe you have something there.
What is it that makes people quick to support verbally, but slow to support in any other way? I don't think it's a matter of lack of care. What I'm thinking about, what that brought up for me, is sitting inside of a workshop, and it's all artists, and we're talking about projects that we want to spark up with our activism. And everyone had moving responses and projects that they want to start, and ways that they're going to use their fashion and music and everything. And, just sitting in there, what I realize is just, we live in different worlds. We're connected to different things. What tugs at the heartstrings is just different. And so I'm speaking about advocating for communities to see me and mine as human. And what culturally and personally is relevant to other artists are things like retrieving artifacts from British museums, building a building in honor of another person of their community. Visually allowing people to see what they hear. The sphere of impact is just different. And so I can't take anything away from people and what moves them. But I will say that, you know, sometimes it's hard to remain optimistic and hopeful for coming together and change and having people be aspiring white allies and be allies that we really need in order to make change. Because I don't think people ever fully understand the level of change that is necessary. And so it's just more comprehensible on a smaller scale of impact. And I don't really know how I can hold people accountable for not being able to see the larger picture or how deeply it affects me or my people or immigrants or anyone else.
Wow.
That's powerful. What about for you, Sam?
Sphere of impact. I really like that. Yeah. I think allyship is established, continued, sustained work, right? It requires a lot of humility that we, as I think, when you belong to minority groups, you learn that humility growing up, right? Like you have to earn your arrogance. You have to earn your obnoxiousness. You have to earn your entitlement, right? So that comes with a certain level of humility. Like you are humbled constantly by your elders. You are humbled constantly by struggles of your peers. You are humbled constantly by the oppressions you know may or may not happen to you, but will happen to somebody who looks like you without doubt, right? In high percentages. And so when you learn humility on such a intuitive level from the time you are very, very young, then it just becomes a part of who you are. And certainly you can unlearn humility, but it's harder to unlearn humility than it is to learn it as an adult who has felt a certain level of entitlement to the things that are brought to them in their lives, right? And so the idea that in order to be a good human being, you have to acknowledge that you and yours have done bad things first is a really, really hard truth to reckon with. And I think that is what people, which is why when we speak something, we don't necessarily always speak truth to power, right? So when we speak something, it's easy to want something, it's harder to actually accomplish it. Right? And we know that no matter what, right? It's easy to say, I want to be a doctor, but you have to do all the things to become a doctor, right? I want to be a lawyer, but you have to go to law school, you have to pass the bar exam, you have to do all of these things to actually become a lawyer. So to be an ally, you can say, I want to be an ally, but not being a homophobe and not being a racist is not the equivalent of being an ally, because you don't punch me in the face on a regular basis doesn't make you my ally if you're not actually fighting for my liberty, right? And so I think it's work, it's a career, for crying out loud. Any activist will tell you that, you know, like it's hard career-like work, you know, and you put so much effort into it. But I think like any seasoned white ally, and I'm being very honest with you, I know about two of them, will the reason why they're such good allies is because they never stop doing the work. They're constantly there and they're constantly doing the thing. I think that's what makes it hard.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate the gifts that you're both giving in your introspections. There's two things that come to mind for me. One is that we like to think, I think collectively, that we're good people and that we have good values, like strong, awesome values. And when you are receiving feedback that what you're doing is not in alignment with your values. So like, I treat everyone fairly, or I believe that we all have an equal shot. And that's like a big value of mine, because it then comes back to feeding my own ego. If we all are given a fair shot, then I am successful out of my own merit, which feeds my ego. And so then it's like, you didn't earn everything you have. And in these examples, personally and systemically, you are not being a good person. It's like, so when you kind of stare into this abyss of, wow, so you mean to tell me in like all of these micro and macro ways, I have been like an asshole and I've contributed to people dying and people suffering and people I don't know and people that I love, like one and the same. Like when you look into that abyss, you feel like shit, as you should. That means you're a good person. So then do you like own that, as Jamie, you've been talking about, like own your feelings, and then as Sam, you were saying, take accountability for it? Or do I then run away from those feelings by saying, actually, you're wrong. Those things aren't true. I am a good person. I feel like that's like a big moment where it happens at. That's at least when I think back through my own feelings, being like, wow, like that is something I can never take back. And I've treated so many people in that way. And I thought I was out here doing a good job. I think that's a big moment. That how do you deal with that instance?
I think that is what I mean when I say being able to grasp the sphere of how big, how grave, how critical it really is, like the work that has to be done.
Do you all, at this point, either of you have a poem or poetry you'd like to share? No pressure to do so. It's not do a poem for us. But if you are feeling called to, I wanted to offer the opportunity. We can also have 3 poets on a call and not do any poems. Like it's not we must, but I wanted to give the like, if anybody wants to, the chance.
I do not have any to offer at this time.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think I'm there with Jamie too.
So I was doing an interview yesterday and somebody asked me, have you ever forgotten a poem during an important moment? And I said, only once. And they're like, okay, awesome. And then I said, but I do have nightmares all the time where I get on stage or somebody asks me to do a poem and then I forget all of my poems. And they said, oh man, that's crazy. Can you do a poem for me? And I couldn't remember past the first word of any of my poems. I was like, da-da-da. Oh, da-da-da. Oh, and so I had to pull it up on Evernote and read it off the computer. I was like, this is my nightmare. And they're like, let me help you reenact your nightmare. It was intense.
Wow.
What'd you say?
I said they primed you for that.
Yeah.
Like, right? Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
I guess I'm having these nightmares because I have actually forgotten all of my poems. So my body was warning me. Are there any questions that you all want to ask each other or you want to ask into the space? Is there anything in the, a question or anything you'd like to put out there?
I mean, I know we've talked a lot about activism, but I'd love to know from Jamie. Jamie, are you working on something specific right now, art-wise, poetry-wise? I know you mentioned workshops a lot.
Yes. We think So right now, I've been sharing and compiling work across the past 10 years that I've created. And I want to put that out there for people to have, but also want to develop a type of digest to go along with it because it's so dense, the work that I've made. And also focusing more on intergenerational spaces and the healing and community and cycle breaking that can happen when we enter those conversations, tell those stories within a lineage.
Wow, amazing. That sounds boss.
Thank you. Right back to you though. What have you been cooking, stirring, serving?
Oh, something has come up recently, but before we go there, can I ask you one more thing real quick?
Oh, yes.
Okay, sweet. When are you coming out with this digesting? Do you know? Sorry.
No, I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of different pieces. So I have a 20-minute show, which is a film, which is in production that can be shared. I also have a manuscript of about 13 pieces right now that are each their own thing and kind of dense, but talk to each other. I think right now it's about really sitting down with other people to see what would be best to be pulled out. And so one place where I'm starting is within a week, I'm going to be doing a workshop with fifth graders in Wisconsin with the program Students Against Hate United by Love to try to take some of the work I've made because it was based off of a piece I made called A Turtle and a Log, which is talking about humanity and our coexistence. And so I was like, okay, great. So how do I take a piece that I've made about humanity and coexistence and package it and flip it so that fifth graders can understand and then produce their own work? So things like that, gradually I'm going to collect and hopefully be able to push.
That sounds awesome, fam. It's multimedia. It's got so much involvement and collaboration. That's so boss. Wow. That's awesome.
So then what about you, Sam? What you working on?
Sorry, I mentioned, right, like something came up. So last year right before COVID hit, I wanted to do this. Immigration is very fresh on my mind right now because it's something that I'm constantly dealing with. I wanted to do this immigration, like live performance installation art project. So sorry about the light. It's killing me. I know the light is changing because the sun is setting. It's like super killing me. It was so boss at the beginning of the show. And now it's like this, right? But anyway, whatever. So I feel like I'm hiding in the shadow very literally and yet very intentionally. So this thing that I'm working on last year, right before COVID hit, I had planned on doing this live immigration art project where I have about like 8 pounds of paperwork, is all of my immigration paperwork. I literally had to bring like a separate carry-on suitcase for it when I came back from India because there was that much of it. I had to take everything when I left. And so, yeah, right, ridiculous. So what I want to do was I want to take a bunch of the documentation that I have, photocopy it, black out some of the sensitive information because obviously I don't want everybody to know where I live, et cetera, and my social security number and all of that, black out all of the sensitive information and give those photocopies to a bunch of humans, just random community members who are not artists, who are not poets, so they won't see and try to figure out what's going on, right? And have them cut up those pieces of paper by a 6 foot by 4 foot canvas and have them collage the entire canvas with all of this immigration paperwork, right? So they can tear it up, they can cut it, they can do whatever they want, and just use a glue stick and create like a full collage so that from top to bottom, side to side, the entire canvas is covered in immigration paperwork. And then I wanted to collaborate with some organization. Now that organization, I've identified the organization. The organization is Allendale United Methodist Church, which is an incredibly progressive church who has offered many immigrants sanctuary in their space, offered me sanctuary as well when things went down with me in 2018. And so just a really progressive, values-minded space. And what I wanted to do is to put up that canvas in the chapel, right? To kind of have a cross conversation between immigration, sanctuary, religion, progressivism, et cetera, protecting our people, et cetera, et cetera. And in front of a live audience, I will not be working on that collage, so I will not see what that collage looks like until I get up on that stage. In front of a live audience, through the process of redaction, create a poem on that canvas from all of that immigration paperwork, right? So purely by the process of using a Sharpie and blacking out words, create an actual poem on that canvas. And so I had that idea, COVID happened, couldn't do it. And then the other day I was like, after my birthday and the whole fiasco happened with me not feeling well, I was like, man, I got to do something that feels good. And somehow that immigration project is where like it stood right here in my heart. And I was like, okay, I'm going to call Pastor Andy Oliver from Allendale Church. I texted him and then we spoke on the phone. He's like, I love this. Absolutely. Also, I don't know if it's too soon, but we have an immigration quilt visiting us Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of next week. Will next week to be too soon for you? And I was like, absolutely not. Let's go. And so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that immigration quilt will be visiting. And Friday, I will close the show by having an artist reception / live performance, which will be this entire show. And people can come and they can watch me create the poem, and then they can go up and read the poem for themselves. I also think it's really cool because each person will read that poem differently, because I'm not going to speak it, right? I'm not going to perform it. I'm just going to create it. And then everyone will have to do the work of putting the poem together. So essentially, in some level, yes, I will do the redaction and actually create the poem, but they will still have to read past the redaction to read the poem for themselves. And so I think that helps them recreate the poem for themselves as well, therefore taking part in its actual creation.
Wow, that's amazing.
I'm excited.
I love the level of engagement. It's so hands-on and so physical. I have a question for you. So you talk about like the photocopying and, you know, passing on of these paperworks to other people to rearrange, find the story, glue, tape, all of that. What is your relationship to this stack of papers?
It's my whole life. That is the documentation of how I have lived my life over the past 14 years, right? So it is every allowance, it is every acceptance and rejection of statehood and personhood over the last 14 years. It is every, it is that constant precarity of you can come and you can go as we please, not as you please, right? And it's that reminder of having that. It's also that reminder of, did I seriously have to bring an entire carry-on bag with me just so that I had space for this paperwork? Right. And so it reminds me of that, because it's ridiculous, fam, because it's like you're allowed 2 carry-on bags, 2 check-in bags, international travel. But because this was 1 pound over, I had to check this bag in as well. And I was like, but that's my immigration paperwork. I don't want this checked in just in case it gets lost or anything. And they're like, ma'am, we can't do anything about it. It's overweight. You have to check it in. And I was like, okay, do you have a lock that I can buy from you? And I bought a lock from them, from Emirates Airways. I bought a lock from them, locked the bag, and then sent it. So the whole time that I was on the flight, and this was the flight where I was coming back to the US after having been sent away, right? So the last thing I want to be without is my immigration paperwork, And so at every single port, I had them check to make sure that that bag was routed, like onto the plane and nothing was lost. And yeah, so that relationship is just so consistent with it. And it's very timely because my visa, this 3-year visa that I now have, expires on April 21st. And I'm currently in the process of renewing my visa as well. So it's all happening in that same time frame.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was our last interview. You were in India. That's the last time you were on here. So that was 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yep.
Man, y'all are so cool. I love what you're both doing. And it's been an absolute honor and a treasure to have you all here. I was going for a walk with Jayama on, I think it was Wednesday morning when I messaged y'all and was like, I have this vision. So I just want to say I appreciate you all for responding to the message, for taking the time to be here. For folks who want to message y'all and let you know how awesome you are, they want to support your work, where can they get at you? What's the best social media or website for them to do it at? Why don't we go Jamie and then Sam?
Wonderful. So I'm Jamie Dawson. You can find me, Jamie Dawson, Dawson the Artist. So at Dawson the Artist, my website is dawsontheartist.com. That's where you can find music, poetry, videos, links to the many more things that I have to share with them.
And then Sam?
My website is samiraobeid.com. I'll spell that for y'all because it's not easy. It's SAM like Sam, IRA like Ira, Obeid, OBEID.com. And you can find me on Facebook by that same name. You can find me on Instagram as well by that same name. And if Samira doesn't work, just use Sam and you should be fine.
And as always, we'll have all of their links in the show notes below. Y'all, I am just blown away that you shared your time and that you went those places that you did with me. It's a gift. And so I appreciate you both as friends, but also, I don't know, professionally. I don't know what word I'm looking for here. Like as a human, I don't know what we're looking. Insert word. The poet has no words. Thank you. So I appreciate y'all. So anything y'all want to say to each other before we ask the last question of the day?
I just want to say thank you, Jamie, for letting me spend time with you and share space with you. And I think you're so awesome. And I'm so in awe of this compilation you're coming out with. And 10 days from now or 10 years from now, I'm still going to be waiting for it to come out and grab whatever it is, because I definitely want to be a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you. Sam, you honor me. You inspire me. I am proud to know you, to say we are community and that we are peers. Now till 5 ever.
Much love, fam.
We'll have to have y'all back here another 3-4 years from now. We'll keep doing these like time capsules.
That sounds lit, man. That's such a great idea. Oh my God.
So here's our final question. What is your invitation? What would you like to invite people to do, to be, to consider, to reflect upon, to engage in, to read? What is your invitation?
I want to invite people to let go. There are things that we hold on to. There's forgivenesses that we don't give. I want to invite people to let go. To, if it takes a while, start the process of letting go. To be lighter in spirit, to be lighter on the soul, and to be lighter and kinder to themselves and to other people.
Yes. Thank you, Jamie.
So kind. That's such a lovely, compassionate message. I love that. I want to invite people to be excited about their learning, right? We talked earlier about how it can be so difficult and it can be so disheartening to learn things about yourself, right? And certainly you can take that route and you can run away in the opposite direction, but I'm going to invite you to be excited about it and say, oh my God, I get to actually have the opportunity to be who I've always wanted to be. What? How many people get that opportunity? That's so amazing that this can happen for me. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be so excited about it. And I'm going to like embrace accountability like I have never embraced anything before. I'm going to embrace humility like I've never embraced humility before. Teach me the things, hold me accountable, let me be responsible, let me learn about myself, and let me be better for that. So I invite you to, yes, be better, but through these processes.
Love that.
I mean, to what we both said, I appreciate y'all. This has been absolutely amazing, better than I could have ever imagined. And so I appreciate y'all. And to those who are listening, we thank you once again for sharing your greatest gifts, your time and energy. And as always, we're wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomearl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.